You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos Country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
All right, welcome in, everyone. We're going to let the feed breathe here for just a second. So just give us a quick second here and... there we go. All right. Welcome in, everyone, to Building the Broncos. I am back again this week. Got my fun times down in Louisiana. Didn't get carried away by their mosquitoes. Man, those things are huge. I can't even, it still gives me nightmares thinking of those things, but I'm back. So I'm excited. Unfortunately, no Broncos game happened in between the last time that I was on the show and now. It's kind of crazy. The Broncos have had just the weirdest things happen. Everybody already knows about all that. But anyway, Nick, welcome in, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I'd like to apologize in advance for if there's any background noise of the unit that I moved into. They cut the yard in half and are building new housing units in that yard. So there's a lot of banging going on and some joyful singing, which I won't fault them for, outside working a little bit in the rain. And also I think we're in a gale warning right now. So can't escape the weather talk, Carl. Can't escape it. From Midwest to the Northwest, we're still going to keep that segment in here. But doing pretty well. Went on a pretty epic hike this weekend as well. It snowed, and we were up to our knees in snow, crossing a mountain pass, which was, I felt like Gandalf in the Fellowship of the Ring with like Saruman's voice in the distance. Yeah. But not to get too nerdy here, we're going to talk a little bit of football now. We gotta get some cool guy jock points going now after talking Lord of the Rings and stuff.
You're talking about the construction guys outside. You got the outfit, man. Were you out there helping them?
Oh no, man. This is more of that Paul Bunyan look going on right now, the lumberjack. But I just got in.
I was telling John while you were gone there for a second that you should have been joining me with my crew because I had chainsaws going left and right. I don't know why they trusted me with one of those things, but they did, and so I got to go around cutting up trees, and it was a good time. So yeah, you would fit in perfect, man.
Well, that's good to hear, but there's a reason I went into academia, manual labor. So these are soft hands, baby. These are so soft. Other than the violin calluses. Now we're getting way too nerdy. But guys, today's live stream podcast is brought to you by sportsbetting.com. Broncos country gambling is now legal in the great state of Colorado. And here's what makes sportsbetting.com a no-brainer for all sports fans. They have sharp odds and low juice. They have in-house bookmakers, and they're not a third-party provider of odds and reduced juices. They have the best prices, hassle-free bonuses with a one-time rollover, which means the bonus money is yours after you bet it just one time. They have 24/7 live customer support, which, always a real person answering you. It doesn't get better than that. And here's the kicker. At sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle, you can get a 100% risk-free week of sports betting up to $500. Not just one bet, but every single one of your bets. Play for a week, and if your losses exceed your winnings at the end of the week, sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle will cover 100% of the difference, up to $500 with a one-time rollover. So head on over to sports betting at www.sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle. Again, that's www.sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle and capitalize on a risk-free week of sports betting up to $500. What are you waiting for? You got nothing to lose. So I guess unless you gamble over $500, but if at that point, we got to talk. So anyway, bringing it back here, speaking of what's going on in the real world, Broncos didn't have a game this week. And I think that's probably that's not the theme of today's episode, show, whatever you want to call it. But I don't think we can start the show without saying Broncos got a little bit screwed. I guess there's no other way to put it. I feel for the players because it's already such a tedious season, given everything they have to go through, but now they don't even get that week off. Maybe that's the best. Maybe they need that week of conditioning and in the trainer's room and whatnot. But mentally, I think that's a bummer. And I definitely agree with Vic Fangio, in the grand scheme of the universe and the suffering that's going on due to everything in the world, that's small potatoes. But it's still a factor. It's something we have to talk about.
Right. It is. And I think coaches-wise, the coaches probably have to be halfway happy because sometimes that week off is when players go and do some pretty stupid things. Yes, they like to go. And especially in this time where you don't want players going out and socializing and things like that, maybe not going out for a week ends up helping the Broncos in the long run. We'll see how other teams handle their bye week and things like that. But beyond that, it also helps that now we get, hopefully, 12 games with Drew Lock and Phillip Lindsay and AJ Boye maybe. We'll see. Noah Fant coming back possibly. We'll see. But, maybe they can get a couple guys healthy. So that could make a huge difference as the season plays out. But otherwise, for the players, when you have expectations of a week off, and I know a lot of players, I know some people got mad at Eric Ebron when he complained about his bye week being taken away because he made plans for his kid's birthday party and things like that. And I understand, like, in the grand scheme of things, have to miss your kid's birthday party, not the end of the world. But it still matters. I mean, any parent out there, if I had to cancel my kid's birthday party and tell them, hey, I'm sorry, my job requires me to do this, that'd be tough.
Ask the kid if it matters.
Yeah, it does. And so I understand that the players were upset, especially reading everything on Sunday. I was upset. I mean, I woke up and I was in Houston at that time, and reading through that, I called my wife I talked to my wife because she was in the hotel room with me, and told her this is messed up. I used some not so choice words.
Excellent.
Yeah, but I was a little upset, and just to see that the team that did everything right is the one getting punished. That's what stinks.
Yeah, the biggest bummer for me looking at it is, there's such an obvious, and I talked about it with Moana last Saturday, but there's just such a delineation between the Broncos, the Patriots quarterbacks of Cam Newton to Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer, that's really the biggest difference maker. But outside the quarterback position, you're also talking about them maybe getting their single best player back in the reigning defensive player of the year.
Yep.
In Stephon Gilmore. So, it's really, there's no other way. I understand that it's safety precautions and they're trying to reduce an outbreak, and I get that, but it is a bummer for the Broncos because arguably the two best / most important players for the Patriots were going to be out or potentially out, and now they're much more likely to be in, and that really hurts the Broncos.
Right. Well, and I just saw in the comments somebody talking about the Titans-Bills game right now. The Titans have an astronomical number of players and coaches that have it right now. They have done violation after violation, and yet here they are playing a game. Yeah, somehow Patriots have 2 or 3 players, I guess, end up 3 players with it, and somehow the Broncos, exactly. George Fox hitting it right. Look, Tennessee only had 1 practice, and they're playing, but not New England. So it does feel like there's something going on there behind the scenes. I was reading an article earlier today that they said that the Patriots pretty much called the NFL head office and said, we are not playing this game.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Guys, everybody wants to find a way to make a difference and make an impact in the world. A lot of times people get too caught up with our lives. Things are happening. We got jobs, we got families, we got school, we got things going on. We don't always have the means to get around to doing that. But here's what's cool about Coors Seltzer. You can actually make a difference by just enjoying a great, great drink. And here's how it works. Coors Seltzer is launching the world's easiest volunteer program. By simply cracking open a can of Coors Seltzer, you're volunteering. Because our waterways, let's face it, they're at risk. 80% of America's rivers are drying up. Through a partnership, though, with Change the Course, Coors Seltzer is helping to protect and restore America's rivers. Here's how that works. Each 12-pack of Coors Seltzer restores 500 gallons of fresh water to U.S. rivers and the communities that depend on them. The way it shakes out, 1 billion gallons of water get restored to 16 river basins across the U.S., and that's just year one. Here's what's great, though, about Coors Seltzer itself. Not only are you making a difference in the world simply by purchasing Coors Seltzer, but you also get to enjoy naturally flavored black cherry, mango, lemon lime, and grapefruit. I particularly like the black cherry, and the specs are in. Coors Seltzer is 4.5% ABV, and it's only 90 calories.
As someone who covers the NFL and a giant football fan, there's nothing I like more than kicking back on a Sunday morning, getting my spread, getting my food, getting my drinks, putting on a full slate of NFL action, and kicking back with a Coors Seltzer. Whether it's a black cherry, a mango, lemon, lime, Chad, I live for football and kicking back with my Coors Seltzer each and every single game week.
Amen. So join the world's easiest volunteer program, gang, by simply drinking Coors Seltzer. You can volunteer to restore America's rivers. You buy Coors Seltzer, you help restore 500 gallons of water into America's rivers. Guys, it's that simple. Who would have guessed saving the world could be that easy? Visit CoorsSeltzer.com to find Coors Seltzer near you. That's CoorsSeltzer.com.
For every 12-pack sold through 8/31/2021, Coors will purchase services from Change the Course to restore 500 gallons of fresh river water. Details at CoorsSeltzer.com. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Fort Worth, Texas.
I mean, obviously, after watching Brian Hoyer and Jarrett Stidham go against the Chiefs and just one of the most feeble quarterback situations in the league,
Right.
Without Cam Newton, they really had no choice. So I definitely think the NFL helped the Patriots in that regard, but it does help that the Broncos are going to get some guys back, and it pushes everything back as well. And also, I mean, maybe not the best or anything, but also the Dolphins are pushed back now as well, and they just put an absolute butt kicking on the reigning NFC champions to the point where Jimmy G is now the backup quarterback. So, Broncos country, be thankful that we're not paying a big quarterback to be our backup right now. And they'll obviously figure it out. And now they're starting CJ Beathard, the pride of the Iowa Hawkeyes, throwing it to George Kittle. So it can't be all bad. But nope, we got to talk. Speaking of the quarterback situation, that's our theme today, talking about the AFC West, because it did seem like a game that did not involve the Broncos last night sent Broncos country a buzz with we'll just call it the very splashy play of Justin Herbert. Before we get into that, though, guys, this is the Building the Broncos podcast. Find us on Twitter at BTB Football Pod. Go get your swag on at huddleuppod.com. I'm wearing the hat. Carl is showing off the hair today. I'm just got crazy locks going, but that's because I was wearing a hat. And also, guys, subscribe, like, and share. That helps us a heck of a lot. But coming on now, we got to talk this quarterback situation. Obviously, quarterbacks are the main driver in the NFL. If you don't have one, you're probably not going to do anything unless you have an all-time defense or some like all-time units. I always come back to the Eagles a couple years ago, where they arguably had the best defensive line in football and offensive line in football at the same time. And they were able to win I'll honestly, a toss-up game against the Patriots. Still probably could have gone to the Patriots, but it didn't. But most of the time, if you look back on the Super Bowl, the teams that get that far, it's because the quarterback play. And I don't think it's a stretch to say right now that the Broncos potentially have the worst quarterback situation in the AFC West. I can't say that they are at this exact moment in time. I would say that they have to be probably the least favorable situation in the AFC West. Now, there's a lot of nuance with that, and we're going to get into that.
Right.
But just looking at it at this exact moment in time, probably right now, the worst situation. And that's not a shot at Locke. It's just how much we don't know about Locke, along with substandard games that he has put out there.
So I want to make sure to get this out before we start. This is not us trying to say Broncos tank for Lawrence or anything like that. We're not trying to say Broncos have to take a quarterback next draft. It's just saying that right now, of the quarterback situations in the AFC West, the Broncos have the biggest question mark of any team in the AFC West. And yes, Herbert has not proven that he is a long time going to be a top 10 quarterback in the league. He has not done that yet. But right now you have to look at it as they have 5 years of control. He has 0 injuries in the NFL. And I know some people I've gotten into a couple arguments on Facebook, and I know Facebook is sometimes gets interesting, but Locke is not injury prone per se, but the 2 injuries are concerning because they are to the throwing arm. And you and I were talking about, baseball, Tommy John surgery, they never quite, they might have like a short burst where they are the same as what they were before, but it's never a longevity thing. And I've had shoulder injuries before to my throwing arm, And I've never played in the NFL or anything like that, but I do know I've talked to some people that have worked with players that have had some of these kind of injuries. It affects them. It does. They can make adjustments that maybe the velocity is not going to be there quite like it used to be. Peyton Manning. I mean, he was one that showed you don't have to have incredible velocity to be a great quarterback, but he had a great mind to compensate for it.
Also, I think this is an interesting point, and I've had some discussions with some other Bronco folks about it, but I think it bears the questioning how successful that version of Peyton Manning would be in today's league, because I'm thinking of a guy who put up incredible numbers, has been a great quarterback for a long time, and the way the league's trending right now just looks like he doesn't belong, and that's Matt Ryan, a quarterback who's very intelligent, cerebral, has good arm strength, but the fact that he has almost nothing in the ability to create and make up for an offensive line, the Falcons are terrible. And I'm just curious how much of that comes back to that. And Drew Brees is another one too. I mean, those quarterbacks that don't have that playmaking ability, what do they even fit in today's league? And
we do have a couple hellos before we really get too much into this discussion from Dylan. Sup Broncos country. We really appreciate everyone tuning in here, especially on a week that, like I said, it's just been kind of crazy, especially for the Broncos. And what will it be? I think they said 17 days between games for the Broncos, since it was a Thursday night game was the last time they played.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So kind of a weird. It's even like double bye week, I guess you could say, which is nice, at least for the players. They have gotten a few days off. I know the coaches said that they could have Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday off. They will be back at practice tomorrow. So players at least have gotten a little time. They just haven't gotten to travel, do some of the things that they usually do. And I've seen some of these. Drew Brees seem to be fine after shoulder surgery. So I'm not saying this is everyone. I'm saying this is a concern that the Broncos have to keep an eye on. That's our big thing right now with Drew Lock, is he has shown potential. I mean, all of us saw the Houston game. I think that's the one that we all kind of lean on when we're trying to hope that that's what he can become. Big play quarterback, can fit balls into some tight windows, can do some things with his feet that you haven't seen for a while for the Broncos quarterbacks. When you're thinking about Joe Flacco, Peyton Manning, those kind of guys that just can't run. That's what you're hoping for, but he hasn't always shown that. And so quarterbacks can have one great game and still not be a great quarterback. I was thinking,
Matt Flynn?
Yeah. Trevor Siemian. He had that 4-touchdown game against the Bengals. Yep. And everybody was going, I remember there was articles out there by some places going, sign this guy to a long-term contract now. And I'm going, that was one game against a bad team. So again, this isn't us trying to say that Drew Lock can't be the future. It's that he is just so unknown right now because of injuries, because of lack of games, because of his especially lack of time with Pat Shurmur. We don't know how he's going to really meld with him. So he's got plenty of games. He's got 12 games to really prove himself. And it really is in his hands to show that he is the future of the Broncos. But
yeah, and it's a cliche for a reason. Just coming back to you, we have Twitchy Noob saying, good point, Carl. You have to be healthy to show if you can play. It's a cliche, but your best ability is your availability. And with those injuries already adding up, Locke not being a first-round pick, he only has 2 years left of control. So again, the main premise of this show is this episode is the AFC West quarterback situation, how it stacks up right now. And Justin Herbert, you can kind of compare his flashes to the Drew Lock Houston game. Although that said, I think I would take that Saints defense versus what was that horrible Houston secondary. But that said, with Herbert, you have the 5 years of control and you don't have the injuries. And I also would argue that Herbert has better tools. Now, at Oregon, he did not look as loose as he's playing right now. He always looked very mechanical, but he's playing very loose right now. So I guess, good for him. And he's also in an offense that is, instead of that quick pass screen game, which had been perfect for, the Mariotas of the world, they're letting him rip it. They're letting him go out there and be a playmaker, and he's looking more like a Josh Allen type than that Mariota, which fits Herbert's skill set much more. So I think right now, just given the years of control and more tools. I think a slightly better athlete than Locke. I think slightly better arm talent than Locke. Maybe a little bit more elongated release. Locke is a little bit of a quicker release, but I think Herbert has slightly better tools. So if you had to put them head to head right now in a redraft, Herbert's probably going before Locke.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Yeah. And so this is why I know I've already seen a couple people ask the question of what about the rumors of like Dwayne Haskins? Sam Darnold's another one that's going to be coming up. Yeah. What's with the Dwayne Haskins trade rumor? So right now, I would say nothing.
Speculation.
Yeah.
Here's a team that doesn't have their quarterback position solved. Maybe he'll go there. It's a salvage kind of thing. So
right, exactly. It's just putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 4. It makes sense, but at the same time, I don't see Dwayne Haskins coming to the Broncos. I don't think Elway was a big Haskins fan. There's other quarterbacks that I know that he's a lot more tied into than Haskins was.
I would definitely do the Josh Rosen special, though. Like if somebody's looking for, like, let's say they want a 4th round pick, there's never a bad idea to toss a lottery ticket at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
Especially one that was a 1st round pick that has shown talent. Granted, it was an air raid Ohio State system under Day, but I think that if it's not a big pick for Haskins, you go for it. But there are rumors that his work ethic dried up this year, and that was a concern, and you don't want that, especially for a disciplined, demanding coach like Ron Rivera, Riverboat Ron. So it's a concern, and you can say what you want about Drew Lock, and some people, there are people out there. Obviously, we're such a polarized freaking country, and that goes beyond football right now. But there are people who are like in Lock's camp no matter what, and there are people who are like Lock haters, which I don't understand. Most people I think are in the middle, but it's the outspoken ones here.
Right, yeah.
But the Broncos look pretty good in hindsight, not using a 1st round pick, that 10th overall, or trading up for Daniel Jones or Dwayne Haskins and letting Locke fall to them, because that's a lottery ticket again. We're still got Noah Fant, you got Dalton Reisner, you got excess picks this year that you could. I think it ended up being Cushenberry, who's not playing great right now, but still, that's another potential starter there. Right. So they didn't have a chance at Kyler Murray, and probably best case scenario that they didn't end up using that pick on Haskins / trading up for Daniel Jones, because those two look like they are in the soup. They might be replaced at the end of the year, and it's not totally their fault, especially Daniel Jones.
Right. I saw an article that said that they should really start thinking about benching Daniel Jones at this point. I think he's thrown in 23 games, he's thrown 17 interceptions and had 22 fumbles. So big time turnover guy so far. But part of that is the Giants. If you want to look at a bad offensive line, go watch the Giants. I know some people are looking at the Broncos, and I know some of the stats say the Broncos have the worst offensive line. I'd say they just had the most unaware quarterback for 2 games of the 4 in the NFL.
Helen Keller Driscoll.
Yes, exactly.
And also, they might have the worst starting center in football right now because Cushenberry is struggling like crazy. Yep. And they might have had the worst right tackle in football there for a little bit because Wilkinson was playing horribly. So, and Reisner's playing bad. So, no, everybody wants to say, if we replace Bowles, the offensive line will be fixed. Well, he's the only one who's playing good right now. Even the last guy was playing average. So, coming back to the quarterback situation, we've talked Herbert not to death. And guys, I apologize also if there's construction going on in the background. That's literally right outside my window. But I think a big thing we need to say about Justin Herbert is that it is an extremely small sample size so far. And we are evaluating the traits, not the stats, not the outcome of the game. Quarterback wins is not a stat, despite what some of the talking heads will say. But Herbert's look good. I don't want to crown him yet. We're going to see what it looks like when teams get more tape on him, but he definitely belongs. I think the more obvious, I don't think we have to spend much time on Patrick Mahomes. He's obviously not only the best quarterback in the division, but he's probably the most valuable quarterback in football. Russell Wilson's playing better than him right now. But if you're talking longevity, long-term, Patrick Mahomes, it's got to be Patrick Mahomes. Maybe you can make an argument for Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson, but I would say that you're wrong. The real one is that it's Derek Carr. Derek Carr versus Drew Lock, and that's much more of a perspective of your time period. If you're talking 2020, it's probably got to be Derek Carr. He's playing solid football right now. I mean, we all saw what happened Sunday, and gosh, I know that people will look at, again, box score scouts. I know that people will look at the stats of Henry Ruggs so far, but if you watch the tape, you can see Henry Ruggs' impact. It's pretty much what we were saying all year leading up to the draft. He's opening up a bunch. He's vacuuming up coverage, and things are open underneath. I mean, Darren Waller, when he gets a big contract, he needs to buy Henry Ruggs dinner for a month because he's the straw that stirs the drink right now. But I think in just 2020, if you're talking right now, Derek Carr is probably a competent QB. It's probably the most likely projection for Drew Lock as well, that Derek Carr level quarterback. Yeah, he could be better. I mean, it's mostly unknown, but I think it's the most likely projection. And if we're talking long term, I'd take Lock. But right now, it probably Carr. You got probably Carr.
2020, yeah. He's showing that he has great command of that offense. He feels very comfortable with what they're doing. He's finally got some weapons. He had Waller last year and nothing really much else at the wide receiver position. And so this year he's got a couple more pieces that they've added up, like you said, with Henry Ruggs. He was never going to be a guy that was going to catch 10 passes a game. We on this show, we've talked about that. He was always going to be maybe that 2 catch, but he could have 120 yards on those 2 catches and 1 big play. But it was even beyond that of how he opened things up for everybody else. That's why the top 3 wide receivers, each of them brought something different to the table. And it's why you could plug them into different offenses and still find great success, and their stats are going to be different. I'm happy with Jerry Jeudy. Don't get me wrong. But Henry Ruggs is showing that he is a big-time impact player. I want to see if he can stay healthy long-term. That's one thing that's always going to be an issue with him. But yeah, Derek Carr, he's playing his best football since his what year was it? 2016, 17?
It was the year that he was hurt and the Texans beat him.
Yep. But he was playing as a top 10 quarterback that season. I would put some of that on having great weapons and also the best offensive line in football that year. But he also played great. He's finally kind of gotten back to some of that. Feels like he and John Gruden have finally gotten on the same page. So it's starting to get there. But before we keep going in that conversation, did want to get to Duke's super chat here. Really appreciate that. Interesting picture. Keep up the great work, guys. We all appreciate you. Hashtag the beards of knowledge. So I saw you got a little something coming in there.
I saw the Night King when I was on my hike this weekend with all the snow. Didn't raise anybody dead. Yeah, no, I ran the other way. I fight or flight, I'm flying on that one. But yeah, no, the quarterback situation with the Broncos, I think it's now important to pivot specifically to the Broncos. Yep. And what do we need to expect from Drew Lock? I do think that somebody made a point earlier, maybe it was Dylan, about the Broncos probably not being in the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes after beating the Jets. And I think that's probably true because, man, there are some really, really bad football teams out there right now. And I think even though the Broncos are really injured, they just have too much talent. But, never say never. Things can snowball quickly. Yeah, it was Dylan. But we will see what happens. But it really comes down to Drew Lock. In the end, people are going to talk about the quarterback or not the quarterback position because it's really the make or break for the entire team. If you don't have that guy, you're not going anywhere. But I think that the quarterback position, as it pertains to Drew Lock, he's going to have final say because how he plays not only has an impact to how the team perceives him in the direction of him, but it also has direct impact to where the Broncos are picking and what quality level of quarterbacks they're going to have access to.
Right. Yeah. No, that's exactly it. So it's to me, it's kind of almost a little bit of a win-win. If Locke doesn't play great, the Broncos are in position to get a guy that they can build around for the next 5 years and really have plenty of cap space. Just sets him up really nice in the division. If he plays great, well, then they have the quarterback answer figured out, which is the hardest thing to figure out in the NFL. So either way, it can work out. I just hope we don't find that middle spot. Where we're still kind of going, okay, he played good enough and we're not in a position to get those guys, but there's still a lot of question marks about his game. That's like the worst place the Broncos can be, where they still have questions about who Drew Lock is at the end of the season.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
It's giving Andy Dalton that second contract kind of thing.
Yep.
That's when you're in trouble. And you're absolutely right. I do want to see Lock. Somebody made a good point here. I'm excited to see Lock play with Dotson as well although the interior offensive line needs to get their crap together also.
Yeah.
We have WE coming in here. Locke should learn to protect himself when taking hits. He should have tucked the ball and he would have protected himself from that injury. Sometimes injuries are just going to happen. So that was one where he probably ran around a little too long, but sometimes it's going to happen. He got hit really hard. Sucks, but them's the breaks. So what are you looking for from Locke when he does come back? Obviously, I am concerned about the shoulder injury. What are the lingering effects there? Is it going to mess with his accuracy, which we saw that week 1 game? His accuracy was erratic. Yeah, it was. He sprayed around, especially once it got beyond 15 yards down the field, not the actual distance of the ball, but 15 yards with the hash marks. The accuracy tend to drop off. So I am worried about that shoulder. What are you looking for when he does come back eventually? And probably, it really might even be this week. Yeah.
So that is definitely one of my major concerns. Is he healthy? But also the footwork. It seemed like as the year went on last year, the footwork got worse. So the first couple games there, I thought, wow, this is really improved when he started playing with the final 5 games. And it seemed like he started trying to do a little too much and started going back to some of his old habits as he took a few more hits. And then to start this season, there against Tennessee, he was throwing off his back foot a lot more than I had ever liked to see him do, especially on those deep throws. A lot of those were off the back foot. And you could see the accuracy was definitely impacted, and he just wasn't quite where he needed to be. And I wonder if a little bit, because I know we obviously got the training camp reports and things like that. There were a lot of days that sounded like he was running for his life. Even though he wasn't taking hits, I wonder if that kind of built in him that I can't trust my offensive line to hold up.
And this is something coming back to Locke that I was concerned about with his overall draft profile, where I thought that if his tackle play wasn't spectacular, I thought he could live. I really did. He had the ability to escape the pocket, make some things happen. But when the interior offensive line struggled, Locke fell apart. The accuracy fell apart. He would literally throw off his back foot and yell Kobe off throws. And sometimes, especially within 5 to 10 yards, he can hit those throws. But when it's beyond that, it really is some accuracy. And when he's feeling that pressure from the interior because the interior offensive line is struggling, then you're going to start to see him, at least at Missouri, you started to see him throw off his back foot when there was no pressure, or he would move in the pocket when it would make no sense to move in the pocket. So, or he would ditch clean pockets. So that was something that I thought, as long as the interior offensive line was solid, which I thought with Munchak it would be, the addition of Reisner, Glasgow being in there, I thought that wasn't going to be an issue for the Broncos. But the interior offensive line has been getting their butt absolutely handed to them so far this season. Glasgow's been, I think, average. But other than that, it's been left guard, center, right tackle have been D's or F's. That level of play. So I am concerned about Locke. You hit the nail on the head with the weird abbreviated offseason, but it's going to be an issue until that interior offensive line's fixed. And it's not completely his fault, but also circling it back to the Matt Ryan conversation, if the quarterback is not great, bless you, Carl. If the quarterback is not good as far as creating outside of structure and making sure that good to see Chad coming in and making sure that they are a little bit independent of the pass blocking, it's going to be an issue in today's NFL. It's just as simple as that. You have to have a quarterback who can perform somewhat independently of the offensive line.
And I think the other thing is just learning when it's a good time to do that and when not to, such as there against Pittsburgh. That sack he took, or that hit he took, he was already feeling pressure. He's already going down. He's trying to do too much, and he's got his arm extended out there. There's just times you have to know. I mean, Peyton Manning was great at it. He sometimes would do the self-sack. He's like, there's nothing here. Why even worry about taking the hit? And I know some people, that irritated them. To me, I'm going, that's great. I'm sorry. If it ruins one drive, that's fine by me if it doesn't ruin the entire season. Locke, sometimes he just wants to be the hero, and I do worry when he knows he has a 12-game window that he's going to continue to try to do too much. The pressure is going to be there beyond what it should be. I know some even brought up the question of with Herbert showing so much, does that add extra pressure then to Locke to have to go out there and perform on some things? And it's going to be a very pressure filled situation. And you hope that your starting quarterback can handle it, obviously, but he's also a little bit in somewhat of a no-win situation in some parts of it. In the sense, like you said, offensive line struggling, the offensive weapons are banged up. Hamler, we don't know when he's going to get back. Fant is down. Phillip Lindsay's just getting back into the swing of things. You've got your third string right tackle now stepping in and having to protect your quarterback, rookie center. I mean, there's a lot of things working against him, and it's not enough excuses. He's still got to go out there and do something. There's plenty of players going out there doing lots of good things with not great talent around him. I mean, Justin Herbert, he has a terrible offensive line in front of him, and he showed he could still go out there and make plays. So Drew Lock obviously still has to go and do some of those things, but it's just he's got a tough road ahead of him. I'm cheering for the guy. I like him. I like his personality. I think he could be a great fit for the Broncos moving forward. But it's still you got to learn when you got to move on. I mean, Broncos made that mistake with Paxton Lynch. They saw early on this guy is not a hard worker. He's not smart, and he's not really building chemistry with teammates and, winning in the locker room, anything like that. And yet they still gave him 3 years to prove that he could be the guy.
And I want to come back to that point in the fact that the Broncos had Paxton Lynch, a player that they still had some hopes on, completely took him out of the running for that 2017 quarterback class. Right. And looking back, that's all the lesson you need to learn. Broncos, they had Paxton Lynch. So guess what? I'm not considering Deshaun Watson. I'm not considering Paxton or Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. So you have to evaluate. If you don't know if your guy is the guy, which at this point, anybody who says they know Locke is the guy is either biased beyond logic or just, trolling. You have to be able to look at your options and question, do we know that's the guy? Well, is there a guy that potentially could be better available? So if there's any lesson to learn from that 2017 draft with, the 2016 draft? 2017. It was the Garrett Bowles one.
Yeah.
So they took Paxton Lynch 2017 draft.
Yeah.
It's that even if you have a guy that you're not sure about, you don't have the guy yet. So you have to at least consider it. Right. And I also want to come back. This is just going to be, let me step up on my pedestal for just a second. It really freaking pisses me off that there are so many people, especially doing what we do, that are so polarized one way or the other. Why does anybody have to make up their goddamn mind yet when we have more games left of Drew Lock? I don't understand. I mean, at this point, we can talk about the hypotheticals, and if the Broncos are picking top 5 and Lock struggles, then yes, we're going to have that conversation. But to be all in one way or the other at this point, when we still have so many games left and have no idea where we're going to be picking, we don't even know if Trevor Lawrence is going to come out or Justin Fields or Trey Lance. So why are people already planting their flag in the ground when there's going to be more data available to make a better decision? I understand that it's daytime talk radio kind of stuff, and also fans can be a little bit polarized with that stuff, but I just think that's so freaking stupid, and that bothers me so much.
Yeah.
There's no reason. We have 12 games. Don't do it.
Right. So Mr. Boggins, I like what he has to say here. Locke's biggest issues is 1, pocket presence, footwork. 2, safety reads. Yes, there's plenty of times I think he trusts his arm a little too much, thinking he can beat the safety to the corner, and it has cost him a couple interceptions. And just understanding a little bit some of those throws. There's guys going to be moving pretty quick. He's got to read a little bit better on some of that. Throwing off his back foot, we already talked about that. Lack of touch passes. Some of those deep passes, you saw him just rocket it and didn't really – I mean, that's the thing. The guys that are great at the deep ball, they give the most room for the wide receiver to go and make the play.
Bucket throws.
Yep.
You can have arm talent, but if you can't, this is the Aaron Rodgers, man. They have the little netting 60 yards down the field, and you see him opposite end of the field, toss it in there and do the championship belt thing. Yep. That's that bucket throw. And we just haven't seen that from Locke yet. He has arm talent, but as far as that feathery touch, haven't seen it yet. And I would like to say that your point 1B, which was his footwork and his touch was 4. And what was number 3? I'm sorry, I think John took it off. But all those things come back to his footwork. Everything comes back to the footwork there. Throwing out the back foot, touch passes, footwork, those are all related. I mean, it's the same with baseball, but I think it all starts with the feet and the base. And if you're not balanced there and you're not doing your job there, then you're going to lose accuracy and you're going to have issues.
Yeah. Jeff C coming in here with a super chat. Rippon stood in the pocket better than Locke. He's also thrown 4 interceptions in 5 quarters.
And it was the Jets.
Yes. So I'm not going to disagree with that. He did stand in the pocket really well, but that's what he does. He doesn't have the athletic ability to get to the edge like Locke does. He's not the athlete that Locke is. He doesn't have the arm that Locke has. And you even saw it in those interceptions where he tried to hit those out routes. Pretty much, if you have Rippon in the game, you take out routes out of your playbook. The only ones you throw out routes to are the tight ends, who are a quicker out and an easier throw.
Closer to the middle of the field already.
Right, exactly. That's the big thing. I know there's some people that were impressed with some of what Rippon showed, and he had a couple great moments. His touchdown throw to Tim Patrick, that was a great throw in a tight window in a very big moment in the game. But he also had some really bad interceptions that let the Jets stay in that one. That should have been an absolute blowout. There's no way the Jets should have even come close to being in that game. And though they didn't quite end up at the end being in it, but still, his 3 interceptions, 1 taken back for a pick 6 on some bad decisions is why Rippon is just not the future. Now, he could be a future backup, but he's not the future of the Broncos.
Yeah. And this is a good point as well. Thank you, Jeff C., for your comment. Dylan's getting it. And this is the thing that I struggle with Drew Lock. And if the Broncos are in a position to, let's say, reshuffle and get 5 years of control on a new quarterback rather than 2 with Drew Lock, it's that Josh Allen is only now really getting it all together. And it could be a thing where the Broncos move on too soon. But at the same time, it's the opposite end where if they stick on somebody too long and they let an opportunity go past them. So you have to weigh it. And I want to say also for Josh Allen, and I think this is a great juxtaposition between Josh Allen and Paxton Lynch. I definitely was a little bit gun shy when it came to Josh Allen because Paxton Lynch failed so hard. But, the tools are great. I mean, Justin Herbert's winning on tools right now. Josh Allen's winning on tools. And Paxton Lynch had tools, no doubt. A good athlete, solid, okay athlete, kind of like a mediocre low-end tight end level athlete, and had arm talent. Granted, it was a pretty elongated release. But if you don't got it between the ears and you don't got it in your ribs, in the rib cage, you're not going to stick around. So you can have all the tools in the world, but if you're not putting in the work and you're not smart and you're not that dude, then it's not going to matter. And I think by listening about Josh Allen, his teammates love him. And also give him hats off to the Bills organization. McDermott and Bean might be the best head coach GM combo in the league right now. But it will be interesting, but that's a good point, Dylan. It would suck to move on and then Locke doesn't be the guy, but you got to be careful.
You can fail both ways. You can have success both ways.
Yep.
That's why there's just so much risk. But you see most NFL teams, if they have an opportunity these days to get that young quarterback, they're going to do that. Yeah. Just like I said, 5 years of control is so big in the NFL today. It's the golden egg from the goose. It just sets your team up for so much success. I mean, the Chiefs just won a Super Bowl. Really, I mean, the Raiders were a top team before Carr got hurt when he was on his rookie contract. And I kept saying the Raiders have to win a Super Bowl on his rookie contract because they're not going to be able to do it once he gets paid. Joe Flacco, they were able to win a contract or win a Super Bowl while he was on his rookie contract. Got paid. Joe Flacco showed he is not a top 10 quarterback in the NFL.
Bengals made one AFC North and made the playoff year after year. Granted, they couldn't win a game, but that was Andy Dalton on his rookie contract. And as soon as he got paid. So speaking of Andy Dalton, did you get a chance to watch that game this weekend with the Andy Dalton coming in to beat the Giants?
I did not. I was going through Oklahoma at that time, and my phone cut out.
So as it does in Oklahoma. Yes. Whatever that means. But A real question for you. Let's say Broncos are picking 10 to 15. They're outside of that quarterback range. And Locke, they don't really truly believe in Locke anymore. Or let's say Locke, hasn't shown enough. Are you making a call to Dak Prescott? Because you're talking about that quarterback on that rookie contract with a great offense around him right now. He's going to get paid. And the Broncos had a lot of interest in Dak in that draft.
Yeah.
They ended up going Paxton Lynch. God, how things might have turned out differently if the Cowboys or the Chiefs had gotten Paxton Lynch instead. But we're talking alternate realities there. But
I know.
It is what it is. Let's say Locke is just only okay and Dak is available. Are you making that call?
No. I like Dak. I don't absolutely love Dak. He has had it pretty good there in Dallas with a great offensive line in front of him. One of the top 3 running backs in football in Ezekiel Elliott. He has had Amari Cooper for the last couple of years here. Obviously got CeeDee Lamb this year, had another wide receiver. What was his name?
Michael Gallup has been pretty good.
Right. Went for another 1,000 yards last year. So he's had it pretty good. Where here in Denver, he's going to have to be more than that for them. He's going to have to be that true face of the franchise. I'm not sure that he was the true face of that franchise.
Did you even mention Ezekiel Elliott?
I did.
Okay. And so I was like, he's the point for them.
Right.
Granted, running backs still don't matter. But,
but he's still a guy that's above replacement value at the running back position. So I would probably rather take a risk at trading for Sam Darnold at that point.
Yep. Yeah. And here's a good one here. Rodgers got paid and he still plays. Yep. That's the big question. Where's that line of demarcation? Are you going to be that quarterback that gets paid and you're Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Andy Dalton? Or are you going to be that elite guy who gets paid and you're definitely worth it? I mean, we're talking about Rodgers is in the top 10 quarterbacks of all time. So you have to find that line and that second contract. If Locke is playing to that Rodgers trend, then hell yeah, pay him. But we're talking, that's a big difference there.
But I'd also add, has he won a Super Bowl since he got paid? I feel like was it his first year of getting paid that they won that Super Bowl in 2011?
I don't remember because I typically remember it based on when they're drafted, and because he didn't play right away, I can't
right. It's hard to. It is, yeah.
Can't line it up.
So even there, he's been paid, and they've won a lot of games, but they haven't really been that true Super Bowl contender. Now you could argue this year they're looking like a top 5 team in football, and Aaron Rodgers looks a lot more like he did a few years ago than he's been playing these last couple. So that's great to see. He's kind of had a fire lit under him. Some of that Jordan Love getting drafted. Kind of like Peyton Manning when he got cut, that kind of lit a fire under that guy to really want to go out there and perform and show the Colts that they made a huge mistake. But I don't know. This is why Tom Brady taking those cheaper contracts made such a difference.
Man, if only every NFL quarterback wasn't the actual breadwinner in their family. I
know. He was. I told my wife she got a huge raise at work, and I said, "So does that make me the trophy husband now?" And
with that beard, yes.
So yes, that's I've become the trophy husband. So I get to go have fun like this. I show up at home. Maybe I shouldn't say it. Wearing the apron and but anyway,
Carl hasn't worn pants in a week, guys. So Jeff C coming in here, adding on to his comment from earlier. My point is that Locke needs to be more comfortable in the pocket. Of course, he's better than Rippon. Meant this is Locke's issue. Look at Herbert.
Yeah.
Good point, Jeff. I definitely agree with you there. I think honestly, the biggest thing with Rippon is his pre-snap ability. I think that's the strength that he has above all other quarterbacks the Broncos have right now. The ability to see where that pressure is, know where to go with the ball based on how the front looks in front of him.
His problem is when his read is covered, he doesn't have the ability with his arm to get to that second, third, fourth read in time.
Yeah, It's like, let's say he was an incredibly skilled driver, but he is going up against Ferraris and he has a Ford Pinto.
Yep.
At some point you just don't have the hardware. I'm sorry, you could be great, but wrong car.
Yep.
So coming back, we got Tom Elagreco coming in from Canada. How you doing, Tom? I noticed even before Drew got injured against Pittsburgh, he was hanging on to the football too long, kind of tunnel vision on one receiver. Your thoughts? Thanks, guys. I think this all comes back to a new system, a very abbreviated offseason, and an offensive line that was struggling outside of the left tackle position. I'm just going to keep saying that because I think it's crazy. Who would have predicted that the Broncos offensive line would fall apart, but Garrett Bowles is playing at a Pro Bowl level? But it's definitely a concern, and that comes back to the pre-snap reads as well. I mean, where's the pressure coming from? Okay, if I know that I'm reading an A-gap blitz right now, guess what? The ball should go where that blitzer is coming from because there's going to be a vacated space. That's just stuff like that.
I'm really hoping with him missing these last few weeks, that's what he has focused his time on.
Yeah.
Getting more comfortable with this offense, just reading through that playbook left and right, getting in Pat Shurmur's ear of what he wants out of him for this offense, looking at his past film there against Tennessee, then a little bit there against Pittsburgh of what am I seeing on the field? What does my footwork look like? That's one thing that I was so impressed with last year is from what he showed in preseason to then what he showed in those last 5 games, you could see some major changes that he worked on. Now he started going back a little bit towards some of these old habits as the 5 games went on, but at least at the beginning, you could tell he was really focused on getting his footwork right, reading the defense in the right way, getting the ball out on time, all those kind of things was a big part of his game early on. And so, again, I'm hoping these last few weeks, that's what he's been able to focus on, and we could maybe see a little bit of a renewed Drew Lock when he comes returned, hopefully this week. Oh, I think you're muted.
It's because of the construction, guys. We got Levi Hope coming in here now. The year we drafted Chubb, we could have got a QB. Pride prevented that. Okay, I gotcha. Pride prevented that. Now we have a young quarterback. I'm not sure Elway will draft one if we need one next year because of pride. I mean, it's possible, but again, we're going to see how Drew Lock plays down the stretch. And it's not even – some people need to understand. It comes back to a lot of these players. Like I've said it about Michael Ojemudia multiple times. You need to understand and evaluate the process instead of the results. Broncos offensive line is struggling. It's a new offense. It's a young offense. The interior offensive line is getting just whooped up right now, and right tackle is struggling. So Locke could be out there playing great, and the results aren't going to be great. So you have to be able to evaluate the actual process around what's going on rather than, Locke threw, let's say 60% completion percentage and 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Well, yeah. It really matters how that came into play. You have to be able to look at the tape and evaluate that to understand the player.
Right. And we even said coming into the season, really, if you want to look at the offense, you got to compare what they look like in the first 8 weeks compared to what they look like in the second 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Because it should show growth as we go about this season with Pat Shurmur and everybody getting more and more comfortable. And with so many young players on the offense, it was always going to take a little bit of time. So I think you did see some of that uncomfortableness there with Locke in that first game and a little bit into Pittsburgh where just you haven't worked with these players. It's hard to trust them, and especially when you're still getting used to that playbook. That's why the missing the preseason probably hurt the Broncos more than most teams.
Yeah. Yep. So obviously we get to see Locke here down the stretch. I'm excited to see what happens for him. He's got 2 years left of control after this year, and he's got tools. He's got arm talent. He's got mobility. He's got that moxie. I mean, it seems like the players love him, so that really matters. But in the end, it's going to come down to him and the situation for the Broncos. Obviously, they get to have an option to add to this team around him, and we don't want to go full-born draft on this one, looking down the entire roster. We got an entire offseason for that.
Yeah.
But in the end, hopefully Locke is going to be able to show it, and I think there is a chance where Locke ends up being the second-best quarterback in this division still. I think that the 2-game sample size for Herbert, even though he has flashed really well, there are some accuracy issues there. And there's not really a book on him yet. So that's going to come out, and we're going to see how there's going to be a little bit of give and take there. And also Derek Carr, I mean, by all indications, John Gruden is not in love with Derek Carr. So what does that mean? It means Locke could end up being the second best quarterback in this division, and that's enough to win a Super Bowl, because anybody who wants to be Patrick Mahomes is probably pie in the sky. But, it is what it is, and hopefully Locke can come out and prove it this year, make the Broncos, probably not making the playoffs, although never say never. If they beat the Patriots this week, then 2-3, and you're right back in this thing.
Yeah, you are.
But that's probably the biggest thing, is finding out about Locke. That's what the season was always about. The offensive line, unfortunately, is much worse than anybody could have predicted besides the doomsdayers. And those doomsdayers were probably saying step number one is moving on from Garrett Bowles, and he's playing like a Pro Bowler. So, you got it right, but not by the right path. That makes sense. You just happened upon it. But we'll see what happens. This is not I see Jesse coming in basically a Locke roast session now. It's not, but also we're not going to blow smoke up your rear end either. I mean, we're here to talk the nuance both ways, and thank God we have many more games left this season, a long season left, to find out exactly what he is and find out the circumstances around him. But the Broncos did a lot of injuries this year. The most important thing is finding out what they have in Drew Lock and if he is the guy or not. And if they can come out of this season answering that question either way, honestly, either way, that's a step in the right direction.
Right.
Because like you said earlier, the worst thing is to be dead in the water and not knowing, is he the guy or is he not the guy? And then making half-hearted decisions both way because you don't know. Right.
And we've seen that from the Broncos in the past, where they kind of commit to one guy but don't at the same time. Bringing in Joe Flacco, Case Keenum. Those are guys that they're stepping stones to something better, but yet you're spending big money on them for very little production. And so the Broncos have tried to kind of hedge their bets at the quarterback position, and it has blown up in their face. And so, like I said, it's kind of one of those, you like to go all in. And I do think the Broncos went all in with Locke this year.
Absolutely. What do you call signing Driscoll?
Yeah.
Instead of bringing in Cam Newton or Jameis
Right.
Winston. That's the biggest endorsement they could have ever had. We saw how bad Jeff Driscoll was. They went all in on Locke this year.
Yeah. And so I do think there is some great belief around the organization. The injuries probably have some people making some questions moving forward. So again, that's the part that I think really messes with all this. You just got to be thinking of that in the back of your head. If he suffers another injury this year, at that point, you just got to be going, okay, enough is enough. And I know 3 injuries doesn't mean end of career. I mean, Drew Brees showed that the Chargers gave up on him too soon. And he's obviously done great with the Saints. And other quarterbacks have done great when they've changed organizations. Sam Darnold is one that I think if you actually stick him with a competent team, like if you stuck him with the Bills coaching staff instead of Josh Allen, I think that guy is doing great right now. And he's looking like a top 10 quarterback. Position matters. I always said this with David Carr when he was the number 1 overall pick. I've watched his college tape. He looked amazing. Absolutely like a stud, but Houston had the worst offensive line I think I've ever seen in my lifetime and just destroyed that kid.
Yeah.
So Chris Hernandez coming in here. Everybody listen to what he has to say. Great shirt there, Chris. Really appreciate seeing that there. Saw a couple other Mile High Huddle shirts in the pics. Love it. Before you go, hashtag click those little thumbs up. Yes, everyone, make sure you do that. And also, real quick, yes, Le'Veon Bell has been released by the Jets.
No way. A team paid a running back. That's granted, it's the Jets.
Face. What?
Unbelievable. That's hilarious. I'm sorry. That's so funny.
The Broncos are not going to be looking at him. They've already got 2 running backs. They don't want to pay that guy any kind of money. So he won't be with the Broncos, but it is news obviously being out there. So keep an eye on where he's going to end up. Maybe could work out in his favor. It's one of those, I hate when this happens, that a player complains about their situation, gets cut, and then gets to go to a Super Bowl team. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders kind of did that last year, and it's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, I still wish well for Emmanuel Sanders because I appreciate what he did with the Broncos, but just that's a terrible way to leave an organization.
speaking to those in the Broncos organization, I don't want to spread rumors, but they were not the most upset to see Sanders go. So we'll leave it at that. But guys, we got to get out of here. When we get too long, it messes with the stream or something. I don't know. Chad has some technical jargon for us to make sure that we don't ramble on too long. But we got to go. Guys, you can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Make sure you're going over to milehighhuddle.com, which is an affiliate of Sports Illustrated. Go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and a comment. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, and share. If you're on Facebook, leave a heart, thumbs up, laughing emoji, whatever you want. Those all can really help us a lot and can help us continue to bring you these Denver Bronco deep dives 7 days a week, which is pretty incredible. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you guys have a great one. Hope you enjoyed your guys' bye week as well. And we will see you next Tuesday for another episode of Building the Broncos. As always, though, go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.